the last episode, I fixed and painted the walls, and I was really happy with the results because it completely transformed the room. It no longer felt abandoned, but instead it started feeling rather fresh and clean. And because it also sealed the dust on the walls and ceilings, being in the room for long periods of time no longer felt uncomfortable. I also really like the texture of these walls. It's kind of like a sealed memory of all the bumps and scratches that they previously had. But there is something a bit odd that I discovered though that wasn't there in the last video. For some reason, the paint in some places of this room started yellowing and looking kinda dirty. I assume that it's some loose dust from the wall somehow coming through the paint, but that's kinda weird since I did vacuum clean and dustproof these walls, and it is the second coating of primer, and I don't really remember seeing them on the first coating. It appeared some days after painting, but luckily it hasn't gotten any worse, and if it does, I suppose I can always just paint over it. Yeah, this was probably the most unsatisfying masking removal in existence. Anyway, the cherry tree in the yard was full of berries, so I got myself a cob cup and started picking. But then I realized that most of the cherries were still pretty raw, so I decided to wait a few days until they get more ripe. Also, I saw this bird on the tree, enjoying some cherries. I came back a few days later, but there literally wasn't a single cherry left on the tree. The birds ate all of them, I guess. Oh well. After that, I thought I should probably do something about this hedge, and luckily the store already had a hedge trimmer, which was a bit rusty, so I gave it some oil. I carried an extension cord through the window, after which I noticed that there are tons of wild strawberries here, and it was a bit unexpected because this place used to be a gravel road, but it was also pretty epic because they taste pretty good. Also, because the hedge trimmer itself has a really short wire so you wouldn't accidentally cut it, I got another extension cord and I was ready to get started, but for some reason the hedge trimmer wasn't working. I was a bit worried that perhaps it was broken, but came out that the first extension cord had just fallen out of the socket, and when I plugged it back in, sure enough, it started working. But I really didn't like the way the cable dangled in the way, as there is a risk that I'll cut through it, so I ran the cable through the broken pocket of my pants, which worked perfectly, and it was time to get started. And eventually, this is what the hedge ended up like. It wasn't perfect, especially because it was so overgrown before, but now it at least resembles a hedge. I might have to cut down these maple trees one day as well before they get out of control, but personally I kinda like them, so I left them as they were. Now I needed to clean up all the fallen leaves and branches, so I got myself a rake. But I still wasn't entirely sure where I'm going to put these leaves and branches, so I decided that for now, I'll throw them into this massive pile of junk next to the house, which is once again something that eventually will take a lot of effort to get rid of. Anyway, now that I was done with trimming the hedge, I felt that the grass was once again starting to get too long, which wasn't really surprising considering that last time I just went over it with a scythe and I didn't cut it that short. So I pulled out the lawnmower that sounds like it's about to break any minute, and it was time to see if it can survive this overgrown grass on an uneven landscape. The cat decided to come and visit the store as well. He usually doesn't come inside, but this time he did, and he had quite a bit of fun exploring everything in the store. I also found this mirror that for a moment I thought was made in Japan because of the sticker containing Japanese text, but looking closer, it was obviously taken from some clothing and just pasted onto the mirror. And I kinda doubt that this mirror is running Dolby Atmos either. I also found this moth that I thought was dead, but when I picked him up, he was still slightly moving, so I gave him some water and he started drinking. And after a while, he started moving a bit more, so I brought him outside and he flew off my hand towards some flowers. Anyway, now it was time for something epic. Hi, ジムでございます. The thing I was hiding in this corner the whole time was the gym. It's actually been here ever since I arrived, and this is what it looked like before, back when I hadn't even started the renovation. And this is what it looks like now. But as you saw from a moment ago, I only now laid down the rubber flooring, as before the gym was just on concrete. I was able to use it like this as well, as when deadlifting, I just used a bunch of cardboard to protect the floor, which actually works surprisingly well if you control the negative, but I decided that it's probably better to invest into something that's way safer and actually feels and looks nice as well. Although, I gotta admit, since this flooring was pretty expensive, I spent a lot of time contemplating whether or not buying it is a good idea. Even when it arrived, I wasn't entirely sure if I'll actually keep it, but once I laid it down and put the equipment on it, I was relieved to feel that it was completely worth it. Not only in terms of practicality, but it also completely transformed the way the room looked and felt. It started feeling like an actual living room that's already completely usable. And I first realized this when I saw some tools on the brick wall that I used for renovation in the first episode, and suddenly they just felt incredibly out of place, as if the construction was already finished. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to go, but having a finalized, clean, cozy area for the gym where I can even lay down if I want to, subconsciously does make a huge difference, which is why I'm really glad I actually got the flooring. I also moved this V8 engine a bit further back as it was overlapping with the flooring a bit, but because of that, I also had to lift it on some bricks, which unfortunately made it look a bit uglier than before. But it's probably fixable as long as I can move the intake a bit lower. Anyway, I'll most likely make a separate video going more in depth about the home gym, including the entire experience of getting all the equipment and whether or not it was actually worth it. Also, the baby stork finally flew away. I'm a bit sad that I missed the moment where he took wing to see him for one last final time, but I am glad that he was able to grow into a big stork and leave home. The baby stork left to build a new home, but the parents are still here, and suddenly I found this big egg in the grass. It was pretty interesting as I've never seen a stork egg before, and I was wondering if I can save it somehow. Although, they most likely threw it out the nest for a reason, so I wasn't sure if the egg was even fertile. To test whether or not it was, I tried putting it into some warm water, and it ended up floating, which usually isn't a good sign, and when I moved it, it also made this sound, so it was most likely an infertile egg after all. I wasn't really sure what to do with it, so I offered it to the cat, but he just wanted pets, and eventually I just put it back to where I found it.